Welcome to the Wellness for Women show, where we talk about life, weight loss and everything in between. I'm Faye Caseman, founder of the AAA Way Life and Weight Loss Programme, and I'm here to help you put together the pieces of life and weight loss for one last time. This is an episode of the Wellness for Women show, filmed live in the free Facebook group. Tonight I am covering how to curb the difference between cravings and urges and 7 tips in which to overcome them. So it can be tough, right, to stick to a healthy diet when you're constantly battling your cravings and urges. Cravings and urges can feel incredibly strong. They can feel really irresistible, leading to overeating and ultimately weight gain. But there are ways to curb your cravings and urges and ways in which you can try and avoid them. And in this video, I'm going to run you through the differences between a craving and an urge and also give you some tips on how to handle them. So let me know, again, whether you're watching live or watching on a replay, make sure that you leave me some comments in there. So let me know if you are somebody who tends to struggle to stick to your diet because of having strong cravings or urges. So let me know if that's something that comes up for you in the chat. And as usual, if you want to grab yourself a copy of the show notes that go with this, which is ultimately the blog, then leave me a hashtag show notes. So quick intro from me, from those who don't know me again, or those who are newer to the group. I am Faye Caseman, creator of the AAA Way Weight Loss Programme, where I help women lose weight for good by ditching traditional diet methods. And I do this by teaching my AAA women how they can craft their own unique weight loss journey through a combination of intuitive style eating and life coaching. So, as I said earlier, in this video, I am going to cover off how cravings and urges differ from one another and offer you some tips for dealing with them so that you can stay on track with your weight loss. So, cravings, food cravings. So a food craving is a strong, often irresistible desire for a particular type of food. Cravings can be incredibly powerful and quite persistent. And again, if not taken notice of, can lead to overeating and weight gain. And so if you're constantly battling cravings, again, it can be harder to stick to your weight loss plans. Cravings can happen for a number of reasons. That could be emotions such as boredom, stress or anxiety. Can also be caused by physical factors such as dehydration, low blood sugar or a lack of certain nutrients. Some people tend to find they crave certain foods because those foods trigger the release of feel-good hormones like serotonin. When these hormones are released, it can be difficult to resist eating the food that triggers them. Some people also find that they may experience cravings at specific times of the day, such as right before bed or in the middle of the night or in a certain location. So, for example, one of my danger zones is the kitchen. So other people might have eating chairs, for example, usual chairs that they sit in, that kind of thing. You also might find that you have particular cravings at certain times of the month. Something, for example, I found since having COVID is an overwhelming and sometimes really overwhelming desire to eat salt and high flavored foods, so especially crisps, and this is something that I've become acutely aware of lately. So let me know in the chat what foods you crave and have you identified any kinds of patterns that come up with them. I certainly know when we talk in the membership, there's a few of the ladies who feel that if they eat sugar, they will they will want and crave more sugar, which can certainly be the case. As I said, don't advocate doing restrictive dieting, but I did do the Whole30 once, and the Whole30 certainly does talk about feeding the sugar dragon. So that can be a thing for people. It can be something to become aware of. It doesn't necessarily mean that you should steer away from sugar, but certainly having awareness about it can really help. But we'll come on to the tips later on. So, urges. What is a food urge? So, a food urge is something that comes on really suddenly, making you want to eat everything and anything ultimately in sight. Often associated with emotions, again, such as stress, and they can feel really intense very quickly. Urges can again be caused by physical cues, so seeing the food, smelling it, cooking. And for some people, again, urges can be so strong that they feel that they have to eat right away or they'll practically go crazy. So, what is the difference between a craving and an urge? Well, the main difference between a craving and an urge is that a craving is typically a craving for a specific food or a specific type of food, whilst an urge is typically any type of food. It won't matter what it is. Although, strangely enough, we never seem to get an urge for salad. A bit weird that. Although sometimes that's possibly not a lie, but it is. I know that I've had a craving sometimes for whole foods. Sometimes you just want to have some clean food, really. Something that's not particularly processed. I think especially if you've had if you've been eating quite a bit of processed food, sometimes you can crave fresh food. So I guess it can happen, just not as often as the other way around. And so if you are struggling with your urges and food cravings, there are things that you can do to help. So we'll move on to sharing some tips. So, tips for dealing with cravings and urges. So, in the membership, I have a section that helps all about this, but here are a couple of pointers that I've pulled out for you. Any of the members would be able to get access to, like I say, a full section on urges and cravings, as well as some helpful worksheets and some pointers with regards to what kind of nutrients you might be missing if you're craving food. So make sure if you're a member that you go and check out that section if you haven't done so already. Okay, so moving on to the tips. So first things first, identify, are you having a craving or an urge? It really is quite important to identify what it is that you are thinking and feeling, and begin to gather some awareness about what's going on in your mind, body and soul at the time ultimately. So what are you feeling? What's triggered that feeling? How intense is the feeling? Is there a particular food that you are craving, and can you identify a pattern to it? So once you've identified the difference between the craving and an urge, this is where you can ultimately start to develop a plan on how you're going to look to tackle that. Now, it may well be that you won't be able to tackle it in that particular moment, but certainly after the fact, you can then start to identify your patterns. You'll start to be able to identify in advance ways in which, if such and such happens, this is how I'm going to deal with it. And again, there will be many times where perhaps it doesn't go according to that plan, but this is all about how you look to identify your current habits and your current behaviors, and then decide how you want to show up in those future moments. And then you're basically starting to form new habits and new grooves. And again, it's all based on neuroscience. So it's definitely something that works and well worth doing. Next tip is to check in on your hunger and satisfaction signals. You all know, anybody who's watched any of my previous videos, I advocate intuitive eating, and ultimately checking in with yourself, checking in with your mind and body. Eating intuitively can help with your blood, to keep your blood sugar levels stable, for example. And so certainly sometimes you may get cravings and urges if your blood sugar levels, I can't say that word tonight, have dropped too low, and that can lead to cravings and urges. So making sure that you're not using any particular kind of restriction or restrictive methods, because that certainly will increase your urges and cravings if you're eliminating things from your diet. Next up is checking in on your emotions. So are you emotional at that? So if you've got a craving or an urge come up, are you feeling emotional? Have you just had an argument with your partner? Have you had a bad day at work? What is going on? And ultimately, if you identify that there is emotional eating there, the key there is to look to try and work on the emotion, not the food. The food is just an action that's coming out of whatever emotion it is that you're going through. So when we talk about dealing with emotions and emotional eating in the membership, this is all about learning how to sit with your feelings. So it's about identifying your feelings, sitting with your feelings, and then learning techniques to help you move through those feelings, to help you to take better actions for yourselves. So believe it or not, you may not feel like this if you're in the middle of one, but an urge will typically pass after a couple of minutes. So again, the aim here is to just build in a significant enough pause that you can just get through that urge. Whereas if you don't sit and let it pass and you just deny it, you will find that it just keeps coming back and back and back. So again, all based on neuroscience, really, without getting too scientific. Next tip is to check in on your environment. So again, environmental triggers can lead to cravings and urges. So as I said, I know that if I head towards the kitchen, and certainly if I'm feeling a little bit emotional in any way, shape or form, if I head to the kitchen, that's potentially a danger zone for me. Do you have partners, husbands, wives, children who have a tendency to eat or leave things on their plates? Does that trigger cravings and urges in you to eat when they eat and that kind of thing? So checking in on your environmental triggers, and the solve for that is looking to try and find a way to, again, through that awareness, take action steps to either change the environment, remove the environment, whatever it might be, just to reduce off the pressure of those cravings and urges. Next tip is to check your thirst. Get hydrated during the day. So I'm a big advocate of drinking water. I used to be somebody who survived on 2 Diet Cokes and 2 coffees a day. I do not know how my internal organs functioned, but somehow they did. Whereas nowadays I aim to get at least ideally minimum 2 litres, but I aim towards 3 or 4 litres of water a day if I can. And that definitely helps to just, again, regulate your body a little bit more, helps with the skin, all sorts of things. So checking in as to whether you are thirsty. Now, as I said, I am somebody who didn't drink a lot of water. It's something that I have worked on throughout the course of my journey, and just changing up the habits. But certainly if you are having cravings and urges, it could be due to dehydration in the body. And again, the body and mind doesn't necessarily always interpret the signals correctly. It just knows that something's off, and it's like, oh, maybe it's food, and so it throws the idea at you. And actually, potentially, it would be a lot more helpful if it threw a "I'm thirsty." But certainly, again, can help to reduce or eliminate the craving. Next one up, are you missing any nutrients or food groups in your diet? So again, cravings, especially more likely cravings, really are possibly a sign that you are missing nutrients. There is some correlations between what you actually crave is a sign that you're missing a particular nutrient. You could Google it. As I said, if you remember, then there's a handy sheet for you in the membership. So again, that's something to look at. Also, again, if you are doing any kind of diet that involves restriction or cutting of food groups, that will increase urges and cravings. So again, making sure that you pick a method that is sustainable and that reduces those cravings and urges would be advisable. And my last tip for you is to use your accountability group. So share what's going on for you. The more you talk about what it is that you are working on, the more you talk about what you're going through, the more you will find that it gets easier and easier as you go through it, basically. So making sure that you reach out to your peers. If you're in a diet group, reach out to your diet group, talk about what comes up for you, brainstorm things together. So again, if you notice a pattern but you're not quite sure how to fix it, reach out. So if you're a member of the AAA Way, you reach out in the membership. Wellness for Women, the group, that is there for you to use and to reach out if you are struggling with something and you need support or you need ideas, then by all means do use that. So and you don't have to go through this alone, basically. And again, it will just help, because the more you talk about something, the more you're bringing it back from your habit brain to the front of your brain, and so therefore that's where all the thinking goes down. And so yeah, make sure that you are reaching out to people who are on similar journeys to you, and look to seek their wisdom if you're struggling to see it for yourself. So it's quite a short one today. So a quick recap: cravings and urges can be difficult to deal with, but understanding the difference between the two, you can then start to develop a plan for how you're going to deal with them. And if you are struggling with your cravings and urges, there are some things that you can do to help. So I've outlined 7 tips in which you can use to deal with them. And the main thing is just making sure that you are looking to eat in line with your hunger signals, not looking to restrict. Those two in themselves should help you tremendously with urges and cravings. So I hope that you found that video really helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and make sure that you bookmark the group. Make sure that you've joined up on triple-a-way.com for the newsletter, and then you'll get notifications that I'm going live. And if you're interested in learning more about this topic, want to find a solution for your cravings and urges, and how to lose weight in a sustainable way for life, then hit up the DMs. Thanks for listening, and don't forget, if you want to boost your life and weight loss the AAA way, check out the relevant links for today's show in the description. Speak soon.